Yes, sir. What's your name?
Christian.
Christian. Imagine that. All right. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
One quick note. You're a lot taller in person than I thought you were.
I'm a what?
Lot taller.
Taller.
Yeah, I thought you were really short at first. I don't know what it was.
You know, people always say that because they see the TV show, and I go, well, of course. That's because your TV's only this big.
All right, on to my question. Now, you don't really mention this too much, but I'm pretty sure that you agree with it. What are your views on, or I should say, do you consider yourself to be a young Earth creationist?
Okay, I'm absolutely convinced that the universe is at least 53 years old. All right, let me throw my dad in there. 79.
Okay.
All right, this is an in-house debate among Christians. And let me just give you a few minutes on this because it's a very common question. First of all, does science show an old universe? And the answer is, if the laws of physics have not changed, the answer is yes, right? But the assumption is the laws of physics haven't changed. You have to make that assumption, like light from the stars. The speed of light is assumed to be unchanged. If the speed of light hasn't changed, the universe is 13.8 billion years old or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. But how do we know it hasn't changed? We don't, but it's probably a good assumption it hasn't. Why? Because if the speed of light changed, all the other laws of physics would have to change as well. But you're still making it an assumption. Sometimes salt in the ocean is used to try and date the Earth young. The problem is the deposition rate is assumed to be unchanged, and the beginning amount of salt and minerals is assumed to be 0. Radioactive dating, which is used to date things on the Earth, you're assuming the decay rate is unchanged, and in uranium dating, the beginning amount of lead is 0. These are all assumptions you can't prove. Now, what about the Bible? Does the Bible show that the universe is young? Let me ask you guys a question in here. What does the first verse of the Bible say? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, when did God create the heavens and the earth? In the beginning. Does it say when? No. You say, what about the days? Well, the days begin in verse 3. The very first verse seems to indicate the heavens and the earth are created, but before you even start the days. So the point here is that since the initial creation happened before day one, the Bible doesn't say how old the universe is. But even if you think the days do have something to do with the age of the universe, there's different usages of the word day in the first chapter and a half of Genesis. There's 24 hours it could be. There's also 12 hours. How do we know? Because it says he called the light day and the darkness night. There's 12 hours. There's also a period, like an indefinite period of time. In fact, in Genesis 2:4, it says, in the day the Lord created, which is a summary statement which covers all 6 days. And we use this all the time. We use this phrase day, like if I were to say Jim Harbaugh was a great quarterback in his day at the University of Michigan, everybody would know I wasn't talking about 24 hours, right? I was talking about a period of time, an era. There's a fourth possible usage I'll get to in a minute. The third day seems to require longer because you got the growth of vegetation and fruit-bearing plants. Look, even if you put Miracle Grow on that stuff, it doesn't grow in a day. You say maybe God sped it up. Maybe he did, but now you're making an assumption you can't prove. And the 6th day seems to require longer than 24 hours. Why? You got the naming of the animals. In fact, Adam begins to name the animals late in the 6th day. You know how many animals, even in Adam's day, there were? In fact, Brad Stein, a Christian comedian, has a bit on this. He goes, in the very beginning of the naming period, Adam was very creative. He'd see an animal come by, he'd go, hippopotamus. He'd see another one come by, rhinoceros, by the end of the day. Cow. Ox. He's just run out of gas. And then, finally, the 7th day is longer because it hasn't ended yet. According to the scriptures, we're in the 7th day right now. According to Hebrews 4, we're in the 7th day because God is resting. Well, if the 7th day is longer, maybe the other days are longer. The bottom line is this. There is no conflict between science and the Bible. There's only a conflict between some interpretations of the scientific and biblical data. By the way, in the Stealing from God book, there's a chapter on science, and the title of the chapter is this: Science doesn't say anything. Scientists do. See, all data needs to be gathered and interpreted, and that's what scientists do. Science doesn't do that. Scientists do it. And how are you interpreting the data is the question. The point here is the universe old, it may be old, it may be young. I don't think either are definitive, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's old because I don't think the laws of physics have changed. The bottom line is that God created is certainly more sure than when. Now, if you take a hard line on this, fine if you're a Christian, but don't make it a test for orthodoxy. Don't go up to somebody and say, well, you're not a Christian because you believe it's old. I guarantee you this, if Christianity is true and you get to heaven, God isn't going to say, did you think it was old or young? Right? That's not going to be the question. So it's an interesting intramural debate among Christians, but if you really want to go deeper in it, you can. There's a book by John Lennox called 7 Days That Divide the World. John Lennox, an Oxford professor. 7 Days That Divide the World. A good read.
Well, the reason why I'm saying this is because I know a lot of evolutionists would use the old Earth as witness, saying that it took billions of years for the Earth to be created. That's the reason why I bring it up. Now, isn't that plausible to think?
Even if macroevolution were 100% true, that doesn't mean Christianity's false, right? What does macroevolution explain if it's true? Where subsequent life forms came from. Doesn't explain where the first life came from, doesn't explain where the universe came from. In fact, the fine-tuning of the universe is so precise that you need a designer from the very beginning of the universe. Forget biology, that's much later. So even if macroevolution is true, it doesn't mean that atheism is true. And I don't think macroevolution is true, by the way. I think microevolution is true, but I don't think macroevolution is true. I think there's evidence against macroevolution.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Christian.